missed the landing zone there. Kind of worked myself to death this past week and a half. I was up working until 5 or 5:30 in the morning every night. That'll kind of burn you out. It's also, too, not good for you. No, it is not. Yeah? Kind of amazing what people have to do to survive these days, huh? This video is about seeing, and of course there's two different types of vision. There's obviously the vision with your eyes, and there's this vision right here. Every ancient culture has talked about it. You could have two people look at the exact same thing, and one person won't acknowledge much other than the name that their brain associates with it, and the other person asks deeper questions, especially if it's important to understand. You know, might it be dangerous? What is the nature of what actually defines it, and or its essence? People generally don't ask deep questions at all. They don't ask anything about the essence of what something is. I mean, people can't even tell you why beauty is beautiful. They'll say, well, golden ratio. It's like, well, that's descriptive, but that doesn't explain anything. Those are mere words. What is the understanding behind the principle of the golden ratio? The answer to it is that every parameter, or nearly every parameter, depending on how beautiful it obviously is tied to the one. Phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. And you tell that to someone and they still don't get it. That means everything that people see as harmonic perfection or near perfection in life. And of course, there's no perfection in matter. Matter is ever fleeting, but it contains within itself the logos. And there's a great Greek word that's really untranslatable. It can mean word or proportionality. It actually has one ultimate meaning. But unfortunately, there's no English word that can actually tell you what that thing is. But if you actually understand what the logos is, then it doesn't require any translation. This is a transcendent understanding, which is non-conscious. This is due to wisdom. Wisdom doesn't require mental machinations to actually define it. I am working on the book on retroduction and talking about the methodology to understand the nature of what something is using the ancient Pythagorean, and we don't know who before then actually came up with this, but it's been lost. The really, really good stuff, like the Pitaphesian, Plotinus, Numenius, Iamblichus, Proclus, Damasius, Syrianus. There's quite a list. It's not a very long list of the people that wrote the wisest stuff to ever be written. They actually had and were taught that methodology. It's found within the works of Plato, very little bit in Aristotle, and a lot of the stuff that's actually attributed to Plato was not written by Plato. The Timaeus and the Parmenides and a few other things are far more ancient and are not attributable to Plato. We say, well, Socrates, but who before Socrates? This stuff was actually passed down, and there's a lot of amazing stuff found within it. They actually found the ratio between the visible universe and the invisible universe, the cosmos, the nuitos, and the cosmos thacitos. In other words, the phenomenal universe, the cosmos thacitos, and the ontological universe, the cosmos nuitos. And they found out what the proportionality between those two things are. And they actually discovered a neat little equation that I discovered in Plato's Republic 509d to 511. It's the reason why I actually tattooed it right here on the inside of my right wrist. But people lack clarity of vision to be able to see things. A lot of this is because most people don't like to learn. They went to public school, they weren't homeschooled, and any desire that a child naturally has to learn and understand something, kind of like the inquisitive nature of what someone has, a child, and I still have that, like where they're walking barefoot through the creek and they're looking at all the things and they see flow and they see patterns. And when someone ages, unless it's burned out of them, which 99% of the time it is burned out of them by public school system, they really want to ask themselves, what is the essence of what anything is? And absolute irreducibility at its very roots becomes more and more simple. Today's scientists, and I shouldn't call them scientists, what they are mathematicians, those will actually try to work their way to that which is most simple, and they'll complicate it. An Occam's razor and natural order can't be more complicated at its root. It can only become more simple. And yet they do the inverse, and that's what Tesla said about those who could think deeply. They're very deep, intelligent thinkers, but they, of course, couldn't see clearly. Getting back to the beauty and to the beautiful, when someone says the golden ratio, I say, well, what is the golden ratio? You know, phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. That means everything that is beautiful in the ontological and objective universe is only beautiful because it has harmonic sympathy, sympathetic to. When you're sympathetic to something, means you're attuned to what something is either presenting itself as or saying itself. You know, like a story, you might be sympathetic, and someone might watch a movie that's very sad or uplifting, and they're sympathetic to it, and it resonates with them, the moviegoer. That means anything in the objective universe, including the ontological universe, is sympathetic to the one. That is what the golden ratio actually means. This means it is at every parameter, at most every parameter of its beauty, tied to the one. That is what makes it beautiful. We now ask ourselves in the same order about why is something ugly, ugly and vile. The clash and interference between light with constructive and destructive interference creates dark fringes, and of course it creates the dark. So we have different magnitudes of what is not beautiful, i.e. ugly. It has amongst itself disharmony. There's ugliness of objectivity and things in the universe, things that are palpably visible. Even if we don't know it, we immediately recognize it as ugly. And there's, of course, ugly wills that are actually directed towards objectivity, and things that are not conducive either to the one or towards what is sympathetic to spirit and citizenship and society and natural order. And people that embrace that are called demonic. But people say, well, what is demonic? People will talk about demons endlessly, especially in a live stream. And I say, well, what do you think actually defines evil, real evil? Because children and the stupid people do evil things, but we can't say they're evil. Like, oh, look at that child he burned the house down, and, like several people were in the house at the time. I was like, yeah, that was evil. That was just sheer stupidity. It is a love, it is knowing the difference between both and actually embracing. There's no such thing as chaos. Chaos is a word dreamt up by stupid human beings. Chaos doesn't exist, but it's this love for something that is closest to that. Disharmony is an affront to what is divine, and it is an affront to natural order. And that, of course, is exactly like this fake fire here. It has to be fed. That, of course, requires force, and that's the definition of hell. Demons suffer at their own hands and suffer at the hands of their own acts. Love and wisdom is the opposite of force. And I always laugh when people talk about the force of gravity, for example. Gravity is not a force. Using simplex retroduction and be able to see simply, we can ask of ourselves, and 99% of the people in the world think that there's only two things. There's nihilism/atomism, i.e. atheism. Atheism, by the way, has nothing to do with God. You could look this up. It's actually called metaphysical atheism. It's a denial of substrates or subjects underneath phenomena. In other words, a true atheist, and Philebus 29d is the first occurrence of the term atheos, or atheism, was not a denial of God. It was a denial of a hand underneath a sock puppet, if you will. It's a denial of ontological substrates that sit underneath phenomena. So it's not adios, it is actually atheos. But anyway, everybody thinks there's only that, i.e. atomism. True atheism is metaphysical atheism. And you think there's creationism. Where you got an old guy with a beard, not literally, but a lot of people do think literally, up in the clouds. There's this, the absolute, or the agathon, is sentient, i.e. Creator God. And what people believe, I really don't care. And people only think that there are only those two things. And then, of course, when you actually posit that, it's like, well, why do human beings suffering? Well, that was original sin, first cause, prima causa, which is... you type in prima causa, it's written about endlessly by Christian mystics for 1,500 years, essentially. There's something entirely opposite of both of those things. Nihilism/atomism, and opposite of creationism, or this idea of original sin and that the absolute is something completely inverse to both of those things. And people have no idea. And what people believe, I really couldn't care. It doesn't make any difference to me. Anybody that, wisdom is its own reward. Anybody that tries to convert or change somebody's mind, change their belief systems, is themselves a little bit evil, if not a lot evil. Because no one should ever try to rob anybody of their beliefs, especially since it's like a cute little teddy bear in everybody's mind. People get comforted by their belief systems. But people have no idea that there's something completely inverse to both of those things. They've never asked themselves big questions. Fools consider the head of a coin, and another fool will consider the tail of the coin. I don't know if I have a coin here somewhere. It was here somewhere. But the wise are only considering the silver of the coinage. Ever think about that? It's kind of like atheism versus creationism. Over here you have a creator God, and the divine, and original sin, and the downfall of man, blah, 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 blah. And over here you have like a random cosmic fart, and pshoo, boom, out of nowhere, there's life and matter. It's completely ridiculous. If there's anything more radically nutty than an old dude with a beard up in the clouds, not literally, but kind of literally, is the notion that, a cosmic fart or a cosmic accident blinked everything into existence. It's kind of akin to like a million typewriters and a million monkeys, and if you given enough time of a million monkeys pounding on a million typewriters, you'll eventually end up with a complete collection of Shakespearean literature, which we all know is absolutely ludicrous. It's just completely ridiculous. They'll actually point out the splinter in their neighbor's eye, but they can't see the log in their own eye. So I'm not interested in either one of those sides, because nothing true is popular, and nothing popular is true. Also, too, a fool will look at the reflection in the mirror. The wise only see the silver backing and ask of themselves, at least I did growing up, what is the nature of the silver backing on a mirror that rebounds, that light rebounds from it? So we could ask ourselves using retroduction the simple answers that nobody asks. What is the nature of beauty? Why is beauty beautiful? It's like, well, every parameter, most every parameter of it depends on, the palpable nature of how beautiful it is. Some things are just demonstrably beautiful, just questionlessly beautiful. And they actually did a test of babies, and even babies could identify beautiful versus ugly because it is innate in natural order. And that's before babies learn to think or view anything about anything. They'll immediately identify beauty, and they're immediately repulsed by ugliness. So that is innate to all living beings. Human beings, of course, contrive things, and we conflate things, and we hide things, and we lie to ourselves. So we understand what is beautiful and what is ugly, and understanding what the golden ratio is. Phi is to 1 as 1 is to phi. In other words, everything that is beautiful in nature is a harmonic sympathy to the one. What is a thing in and of itself? People don't ask these questions. Why is a thing the way it is? I shouldn't have eaten grapes before doing this video, right? What purpose does it serve that it continues to exist of its own natural order? What is it that makes it what it is? What is its essence, and why does it continue to survive? I mean, if its purpose is unserved, natural order will erase it from creation. Ignorant people will typically keep, due to contrivances and concepts, keep the ugly and evil things alive, whereas nature, of course, desires to erase it. It's absolutely amazing to see that without words and look at it in nature. And human beings always think they're better than nature and natural order, and of course we're not. We're far inferior to it. We contrive and make concepts of things that are ab extra and are against the natural order, which is an attribute of evil, by the way. If you ask a thing as to its nature, why is it the way that it is, if it is simple and divine? Because simplicity is divinity, and what is divine is simple. The answer to the Greeks found as ananke is translated as necessity, but it doesn't mean necessity. What it means is that it can't exist any other way. This natural refulgence of the euristos dias, in place of, by the way, inverse to atheism and inverse to creationism, is something else. It's called emanationism. Religion is totally the wrong word. It's the metaphysics of Advaita Vedanta, original Buddhism, the Upanishads, Pythagoras, Plato, Plotinus, Numenius, Syriana. It's completely inverse to that. So you replace original sin and first cause and all this other ludicrous nonsense with the principle of emanationism. The Greek word for it is called prohodos. But nobody understands it. The only book that's actually written by it was the brilliant Greek translator, is called A.H. Armstrong, but he had no idea what it was. The best Greek translator who ever lived, which was Thomas Taylor. Just brilliant. All his Greek translations are incredible. They're about 7 feet tall if you put the books on their side. Even he had no idea what there's no clue that he had any idea what emanationism was, nor could he define it. But it is divinely simple. It is both brilliant and mysterious and amazing that something so reductionistically simple is so mysterious and so occult. Occult just means hidden, okay? People are confused about the word occult. Hidden. They can't understand it. They can't wrap their brain around it. You know, when you eliminate out first cause or causation, you know, what's the source of everything? The Greeks called it the euristostaias. They also too called it tolma and ananke, and explaining that would actually take hours. But just like magnetism and dielectricity, I'm happy to be the first person to fully understand what magnetism is. And it's very simple. It is a dielectric field. It is the modality of the loss of energy or inertia, the dielectric, which manifests as this three-dimensional force vector, which we call magnetism. We have another word for cold water. We call it ice, but ice is just water, is it not? Human beings have stupidly and very ignorantly done the same thing with this silly word magnetism. Magnetism is just a dielectric field. We could say dielectricity under loss of energy or inertia. And alien species intellectually more advanced than us, like, oh, you're talking about magnetism. He knows what human beings call magnetism. It is irreducibly simple and divine, yet human beings can't wrap their brain around it. The same goes true for retroductive application to understanding gravity, because human beings love, especially these PhD experts in field theory, they'll talk about the force of gravity, but gravity is not only not a force, it's the inverse of a force. Well, you ask somebody, and most people can't even tell us, what's the inverse of a force? Force is a release of energy, like a giant mushroom cloud from a nuclear blast. That would be force. That's the release of energy. What's the inverse of force? The inverse of force is inertia. It's rest. Even Walter Russell actually said that. Humanity really suffers, a lot of it's due to public schooling. Some people are just naturally not that bright. I offered to, when one guy visited from Europe, to borrow something that I spent 30 years on. It's just absolutely an incredible collection. Just let him borrow it for a little while. Now, incredible collection of over 500 gigabytes of material. 500 gigabytes. It's like pearls that swine. If you're the smartest person in the room, you really are in the wrong room. There are a whole lot of advantages, of course, to being the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, but all it does is breed mediocrity. The real question I have to ask you is, how many people do you know that you could say of them that they want to know and understand above all else, absolutely everything else, long life, riches, so on? Be honest with me. The answer is you don't know any. Demons want money and power, kind of like politicians, right? The wise want wisdom, and the fools want pleasure and money. Which of the three of those people is the rarest and the most important? And of course, everybody dies, right? Wisdom, of course, is just a crazy word to refer to self-proximity. Self-synthesis. This is THEURGY, by the way, of course. But nobody considers this retroductive analysis, because there's a little moth flying around here. That which is most simple in the divine is that which is most simple, and yet everybody out there is trying to complicate the most divine, simple principles of this universe. None of these people have come even close to explaining magnetism. They think gravity is a force when it's the opposite of a force. They can't tell you why beauty is beautiful. What is it? What is the essence or essence of the nature of that which is beautiful that makes it beautiful? It's a golden ratio. And I don't fault anybody for not knowing the answer. I fault people for not knowing and loving not knowing. I don't know that crap. I don't need to know. That's not going to make me rich. You know, it's not going to pay the bills, and all of that is true. And that's just basically like a, what does they say, a pig never raises its head up. It's always looking down at the ground. You surround yourself, you say, there's a saying that says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. People have gotten rich and led a comfortable life by having one eye, being the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, and they're able to take advantage of that. But all that does is it destroys you and it keeps you from elevating yourself. I've been around a few people like that. I've offered them the world, you know, like letting one guy borrow, you know, over 500 gigabyte. It's like pearls of swine. I mean, the guy'd rather pick his nose or something. Who knows what? But I mean, it's just like, here's 30 years worth of work. If you want to borrow it and look through it, no, it's not important. It's pearls of swine. People like that I find absolutely fine. Either all desire was burned out of them in public school, which is likely the case, or they're so apathetic to learning, and I don't mean empirical knowledge, to learning that it's just, the guy didn't actually have wife or kids. I could see if someone had wives. I just don't have time for it. I work 7 days a week, got to take care of the wife and kids, and there's an old saying that the unexamined life is not worth living. And that really is true. But the answers to everything in this cosmos are extremely simple. But people don't have the toolbox within their head, which is retroduction. It's not induction, it's not deduction, to actually see and question and understand the essence of what something is in itself, of itself, by itself. All the deepest secrets and answers of the universe. What's gravity? What's magnetism? There's a little moth right here on my computer. I'll edit that out. The answers are very simple, yet people, not only do they lack the desire to know. There is a wholesome desire, by the way. It's the desire that can be fulfilled. The desire for wisdom. All other desires are unwholesome because they're bottomless. Money, food, power, you know, the various carnalities of life. And I asked that in the live stream. I said, how many of you know there's something completely opposite of creationism and completely opposite of atomism / materialism / atheism? By the way, all those things are exactly the same thing. Atomism, materialism, and atheism. You could try to deny it all you want. All three of those are the exact same thing. Something completely opposite of that. Something opposite of the head of the coin and the tail of the coin. It would be the silver of the coinage, wouldn't it? Yes, it is. What if you understood light completely? What if you understood the basic principles of the universe simply? What if you understood the right-hand rule and what field unification actually was? You could understand what desire is, you could understand what wisdom is, you could understand what ignorance is, you could understand what fear and embodiment and suffering is. Not physical suffering, because anything that's born necessitatively must suffer and die, because it's a consubstantiality of matter and spirit. But all the big answers, the really, really, really big answers to the big questions are right there in front of you, but you actually have to want it. But you also, too, must have the toolbox within your head to learn how to answer the questions to these things by being able to see correctly. And I find it extremely lamentable that people don't have that desire. They don't have that within their mind to ask how and why and what and the nature of these things. A lot of people don't ask themselves the big questions. I know a lot of people actually don't care. They're just busy struggling to pay the bills. But all the great questions of the universe, which I've been desperately seeking my entire life for, are really blatantly simple. And they're so simple, they're actually awe-inspiring. They truly are. Tell me what you think. I do read every comment. I hope this video wasn't too abstract, or specifically a great word, obtuse. You know, I'm not ever trying to make obtuse videos. Never am. I worked myself to the bone this past week and a half. I gotta stop working every night till like 5:30 in the morning. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely week. Goodbye.